Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's On the Sofa. We're very privileged to have Brian Hughes with us today. He's just come off of night shift, so we're particularly pleased that he's able to find the time to join us today. I know not many people will be watching this live because we have gone out at not slightly different time, a different time. But if you are, and if you've got any questions, please ask them. Okay, let's bring Vic on.
Morning, Chris.
Morning, how are you?
I'm very well, a bit croaky, so I apologise for that, having commentated on Exeter against Stevenage last night, a little bit on the croaky side, so apologies for that straight away. Went to penalties, Exeter 1-5-3, so there we are. The Thompsons, Nathan and Louis, both played for Stevenage and were prominent, so nice to see them play again.
Yeah, and how is Mr. Evans?
He was doing that a lot. That's what I can say.
No change.
No change there. No
change there. Okay, should we bring Brian on and we'll get started?
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brian. Good morning. Okay, I'm going to leave you in Vic's capable hands and I will see you later.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Chris. Very much indeed. Brian, thank you ever so much for joining us, and especially after you've literally just walked in the door from work. So we really appreciate it. You've done night shift, we should explain.
Yes.
How is that? How is that?
I've kind of pretty much almost worked nights, so it's not too much of an issue to me. I'm okay. I get to about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and I'll probably want to shut my eyes. I go to bed at 6 o'clock every night, so can't be too bad.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, well, as long as you're used to it, and if we're fine. We excuse you any things that you might do in the next hour or so.
I don't plan on doing anything too rational.
No, fair enough. We should explain what you do. Because you're not involved in football at the minute, I don't think, are you?
No. I kind of I left Siren some years. I don't know how many years ago now. Probably 10 years or so ago. And it hasn't really been of any interest to me, to be honest. I kind of lived and breathed football for so long, and then all of a sudden, a little break came, and I sort of kind of realised a lot of spare time I'd put into it, and I've utilised that time a little bit better, I think. So I'm not missing it. I'm comfortable with not being involved.
Well, that's good to know, because it's difficult for people who are involved in football, and then they come out. They do find it a little difficult, I guess, don't they?
Yeah, I would have thought so. If you don't know anything different, I mean, like I say, I joined Swindon as a 15-year-old apprentice, and I've been involved in football ever since. And I would have thought they probably miss it a little bit, but I was slightly different. I think I played cricket in our local village team, just to keep myself fitter, then shall we say? But I haven't missed it at all, and I must be honest, I kind of enjoying the break.
You're a decent batter, to use the modern vernacular, I think, weren't you?
When I could see the ball. Can't see it so well now at my age, but I enjoy cricket. I enjoy the camaraderie of the cricket boys. Like I say, we don't win a great deal, but we have a laugh and a beer afterwards, and you can't knock it, can you?
Not really, no. I'm a Somerset member, but of course, I think you're in Gloucester, aren't you?
I'm in Gloucestershire, yeah.
Yeah, but never mind about that. That's fine. So, as you said, you joined Swindon when you were 15. How were Swindon at the time? Because I think it was around about the time of the League Cup semi-final, wasn't it? That sort of era.
Yeah, that came up when I was there, and I was an apprentice then. I think from memory it was 3rd division, and we were chugging along. I think Bobby Smith had just joined. Yeah, kind of. I think that either in the year of my 2-year apprenticeship or immediately afterwards, I think we got to the quarterfinals of one cup, the semi-final of another, and we were having a great season.
Yeah, what do you remember? I mean, the Wolves semi-final is still something which burns deeply into me. Losing at Molineux. What was the atmosphere around the club at that time? Because boy, oh boy, they had a decent team, didn't they?
I think they had some fantastic players at the time. I was just a young, impressionable lad, and I was just so happy to be there that I didn't watch what everyone else was doing. I was just kind of engrossed in myself and what I was doing, and if you know what I mean, I'm sure the fans loved it. We was a full house every week. Your Arsenals, we think we played in one round, so it was great to see the town buzzing. But in terms of the club, I think it was just kind of business as usual, really.
Yeah, John Trollope, I think, was your youth manager. Is that right?
John Trollope was, yes, he very much so. He was a mentor to me all the way through, John. He took me as a youth team fella. I was in the reserves when he took over the reserves, and I was in the first team when he took over the first team as well. So all the way through my career, John played a big part.
How was he as a coach? I think he by his own admission, wasn't really a manager. He's admitted that himself. But as a coach, for a youth coach, I think he was pretty much up there, wasn't he?
He was right up there with the best I've ever worked with. He kind of used to have just pearls of wisdom. He used to say things and used to go away and think about it, and then, a little while later, you think, he's actually right. He's put it in a way that maybe other managers wouldn't put it. But he was kind of more into what made you tick, how you could get better, and what you needed to do to get better, more so than the coaching. I mean, the training sessions were brilliant for me because I've never been involved in anything like that before. But it was, it was nothing too difficult. It was John was more of a person who wanted to get the best out of you and wanted to know how to get the best out of you.
Yeah, and an absolute gentleman as well, of course. And,
without a doubt.
Yeah,
salt of the earth. Yeah.
Yeah, and remains very much involved in the club, which is great to know. How is the life of an apprentice in those days? Because now there's academies and there's all that kind of thing, isn't there? And, to a certain extent, it isn't the same as it used to be. But tell us about the life of an apprentice.
You're supposed to join on your 16th birthday. I was just before my 16th birthday. You kind of get to the age of 18, they call you in the office and they make a decision on you, yes or no. So either you turn pro or you're looking for a job. Basically, we used to live in Shrivenham Road, the very first house in Shrivenham Road with, I can't think of the bloke that used to run it before the Rideouts took over, but Paul Rideout's mum and dad took it over for most of the time. You used to go into the ground about 9 o'clock. We used to have to put the kit out. We used to have to clean boots. We used to have to do all the mundane sort of jobs that I thought was fantastic, but other people probably thought was a little mundane. We used to train mostly with the first team, and then afterwards we used to collect all the kit up, take it round to the laundry, mop the floors, and clean the baths. Just jobs that probably the younger kids wouldn't do now, but at the time it was brilliant for me. It was my first taste of work in life, and I loved every minute of it.
Who were your team when you were growing up then? Was it Swindon or were you into something
No,
else?
My dad was always a Chelsea supporter, funnily enough, and he used to go and watch Chelsea. So I didn't support anyone as such, but if I had to follow anyone, I used to tell everyone I was a Chelsea fan.
Fair enough. Okay. So as you got through the apprentice ranks, when is that moment you described, when they take you into the office and they say, great, you're going to get a contract. Sorry, you're not going to get a contract, which of course to a lot of people is a very big moment. But I guess it's a big moment when you're taken on as a professional, isn't it?
Absolutely. I was slightly luckier than all the rest. I was in the first team at 17. I didn't get called into the office for that chat, I know, but I used to see lots of lads get called into the office, and it wasn't a very nice thing to happen. But I was lucky. I was in the first team at 17, and I just had a continuation of the apprenticeship into the professional life. So it was slightly different from me, but an awful time for a majority of the lads that I sort of spent my first year apprenticeship with.
I guess they were your mates as well, which makes it even more difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You trained with them, you played with them, you actually live in the same house as them for the previous 18 months. So yeah, they were your friends. It was a shame, and the majority of those lads left, and you never saw them again.
And does that side of it, did you take that onto your managerial career, which we'll get onto a little later, but the humanity of it, sometimes we as football fans don't hear about.
Yeah.
But as a manager, you have to deal with that sort of situation. So did you take that on?
I didn't know at the time I was ever going to be involved in football management. And to be fair, it wasn't something that ever interested me. But I think with the modern footballer or the modern kid, if you like, they're of a different temperament than I think we were in our day. I think you have to wrap them in cotton wool a little bit. I struggled to talk to a few of them because maybe it's the manner at which I spoke to them, or maybe you told them something they didn't really want to hear. But they didn't react to things. I mean, in back in the day when we were apprentices, that they used to tell you in no uncertain terms if you weren't doing anything right. And I think as the years have gone by, you've kind of got to change the way you say things. Then maybe.
No, fair enough. So you eventually break into the first team, and I think you made your debut August 1980. How was it when you get into the first team?
Basically, what happened with the very first game is I never knew a thing. I think we were playing Lincoln, and it might have been the League Cup, I think. And I got told by the manager that I was on the bus and I was to help Kevin Morris with the kit. And I kind of got to the game and I set the kit out and I did everything, put all the boots out and everything, got ready for the game, and then just sat in the corner minding my own business. And then the manager named the team, and I was so oblivious to it, I didn't even hear my name come out because I just thought, I'm not here to play, I'm here to help. And then one of the lads sort of nudged me and said, he's mentioned you. So I ended up playing. I think we won 2-0 from memory, but the manager afterwards said he didn't want to tell me any earlier than that in case it affected, the way I looked at it or felt. So, it was a great day, but I just kind of never really expected to be playing.
I suppose in a way you couldn't take it all in, although it's a difficult one here because players often say they need to be in the zone. You didn't really have time to get in the zone, did you?
No, not at all. I was a pretty laid-back character. I don't think I'd ever been in the zone, but it's it was just one of those things. He just mentioned the team. He maybe thought that I would worry, maybe, or I wouldn't sleep the night before, and he just named the team about 6:20 or something like that, and my name came out, and off I went and played. I just put the kit on, and brilliant, happy days.
I was going to say you're a first teamer now, but how long does it take you to get to be a proper first teamer, if you know what I mean, rather than somebody who's just made your first appearance?
I think I think you need to play a fair amount of games to be a regular. I think young lads like myself, we used to come and go, for want of a better phrase, and we play a few and then we wouldn't play a few. I think to be an established first teamer, you've got to be looking at a regular, a good season playing every game, or over the course of 2 seasons playing the majority of the games. I always felt like I was a kid. Always felt that I was never an established first teamer. I was just a kid making my way in the game.
Well, that's interesting because this was a time of, well, I was going to say it's a turbulent time in the town's history because it went from a League Cup semi-final and a team that nearly got promotion and should have got promotion to all sorts of problems, financial, all that kind of thing. How were you with that? Because eventually, of course, it led to relegation in 1982. So it was a very strange time, wasn't it?
It kind of was, but like I said earlier, I think being a youngster and being so excited about playing football, I was kind of oblivious to most of the things that were going on. I wanted to play as many games as I could. I wanted to play twice a week if I could. I trained with the youth team when the first team weren't doing anything, and I was just kind of oblivious to the situation that the club found itself in. But I did play in the game where we got relegated at Newport, and that was a sad evening. But I think off the field, we never really took a great deal of interest in it, if you know what I mean. We never didn't read the papers or anything like that. Who was doing this or who was doing that really wasn't of issue to us. It was just trying to win the next game.
Yeah, John Trollope had taken over as manager. Of course, Bobby Smith had got the sack, hadn't he?
Yeah.
So that transition from youth manager to first team manager for John Trollope, who then later came back as assistant manager, of course. So his involvement in the club is massive.
Yes.
In terms of playing styles, was there much of a difference, or did they? I mean, how were formations in those days? Are they pretty traditional?
I think they were. They were pretty much a 4-4-2. Most teams would play the same way. Bobby Smith certainly liked that way. And John come along. He didn't change too much to start with. Again, going back to John, he was probably tried to change the mentality a little bit. It always worked with kids, but the big test for John was could it work for the more established players? I think the majority of them took his ideas on board. The kids always did. It was a difficult time for John, to be fair, but he handled himself brilliantly.
Yeah, he always does. You mentioned relegation, of course, but that season You started really brightly, and in fact, I think you were top of the table after about 4 or 5 games.
We were top of the table. I remember that. Yeah, we were top of the table, and well, not that you should look at tables, but we were top of the table and thinking, happy days. I mean, I have no idea how it fell apart. I just vividly now, I'm in my 60s, so I can't remember everything, but I can remember that game down in Newport and to lose 1-0 to a Roy Carter goal, I think, and it was sad day. But at the time, I don't think we thought we were going to win the league, but we certainly didn't think we were going to get relegated.
Yeah, you said you don't know how it all went wrong. It is an interesting thing, though, isn't it? And I'm sure you kind of thought about this when you went into management, how you can be on a great run of form and then suddenly it all unravels a little bit. And it's difficult to put your finger on it. That League Cup semi-final team, of course, didn't get promotion. You mentioned the fact that it played well in the FA Cup as well. And it's difficult to put your finger on why that side didn't go up.
Absolutely. There were some fantastic players in that side and some proper Swindon legends, and so they should be. I think it's a confidence thing. I think once you get on one of them downward spirals, it's difficult to stop it. All of a sudden, everything that you try doesn't work, and it's difficult to arrest a slide. It really is. It's whether you're playing or whether you're in management, everything you seem to try doesn't seem to work. And all of a sudden, the games tick by, and then you find yourself in all sorts of trouble late on in the season.
Yeah, how different is it then being in a side, because you've tasted promotion as a manager, and being in a relegation setup rather than a promotion setup?
I enjoyed being a manager, but it's far better playing. It was probably the worst thing that happened in my career, I think, the relegation. I remember the day. I even remember him scoring, and I just kind of. It's difficult to put that behind you, really. Like I said, the thought that you were playing in the 4th division when you were, you should conceivably have been at the top end of the 3rd, and suddenly you're playing in the 4th. It's a bit of a kick in the teeth, really, to be fair.
Derek Elston's been in touch, and he's a big fan, of course, lives in Northampton. He says, I believe the hospital was run by Jean, her husband, whose name escapes me. Does that ring a bell?
I never knew the lady. Jack used to run the social club as well.
Oh, Jack Conley?
Conley.
Yeah.
Conley. They run it. I think they were running it before I got there. And I think after so many weeks, I think, it wasn't too long, but they left and the Rideouts, took over.
Rich says, hi, Brian. My dad always saw you as a hero, and mine, thanks for my first game at the ground. So there you go. You're all remembered fondly.
Are we related? I think we might be related, I think.
Checks in the post, etc.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, like we're saying, that relegation season started really well, and so did the following season, didn't it? Under John Trollope, it looked as though you were going to fly that season, and again, it all went a little bit wrong.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's difficult to put your finger on why it would conceivably go wrong. We entered each season well prepared, fit, and looking forward to the challenge. And we set off well. And then I have no idea what it is. I'd have made a lot of money, I think, if I could have worked out what it was that could stop these teams having a poor run of form. And our problem was not only did we have a run of form, but it went on for too long, really, and that's what's causing us the problem.
Sure. And in terms of the team, when you're on the pitch, are you just concentrating on your job, or thinking the first mistake leads to a goal, or et cetera, and therefore the losing streak continues? How is the mentality? Because psychology now plays a big part in sport, doesn't it? I'm guessing in those days there weren't sports psychologists about, were there?
No, there wasn't. There was lots of people that thought they knew what they were doing. No, I think you concentrate on your own game. I don't think it's right that you should be worried about what anyone else is doing. You should really just concentrate on your own game. There was things that we could do better, or I could do better, and I think it was concentrating on that. I think if you'd kind of set your stall out to try and win your own individual battles, and if you can win 6 or 7 of those battles, you've got a chance of winning the game, haven't you? I think it's I never ever look to pass any blame to anyone. So lads go through up and down dips of form, but when you're young, you're oblivious to those dips of form. You're just trying to do your best every game. And that's, we had a lot of youngsters in that side at the moment. Paul Rideout came into the side. Charlie Henry was in the side. They were all with me in that youth team, and it was good to see the kids. But the problem is with youngsters is you do get that fluctuation of form.
Do we expect too much of footballers as fans? I mean, we're on the terraces and we want our team to win every week. Luckily, we saw Swindon win 6-0 at the weekend, which is fabulous. That doesn't happen very often. But do we expect footballers to do? I mean, you're human after all. We forget that sometimes, don't we?
Yeah, well, we're human. We've got lives. We've got families. We don't mean to make mistakes. We probably make more than we want to. But I think with fans, I think if you can genuinely see lads are trying their hardest and they're trying to do the right thing majority of the time, I think they'll stomach it. I think what makes football fans a little bit more irate is when they see lads that can do better that don't do better. I mean, I never ever thought that I was better than I was, and I was massively lucky to end up where I was, and I just kind of playing because I was excited to play and I wanted to play, whereas other lads were technically better than me, but did they produce the goods every week? Well, that's why we were struggling.
Yeah, that season, of course, faded away, and Swindon were in Division 4.
Yeah.
You made 75 appearances, I think, for Swindon, 5 as a sub, 4 goals. Tell us about your goals, because that's always a joyous moment, isn't it? When you get your first goal. I mean, for goodness sake, in professional football, what's that like?
I think I scored at Barnsley. We won 2-0 at home. I think I scored at home to Wimbledon and we won 4-something. Can't remember the rest. Well, I can't remember the rest. There ain't a lot, is there? A lot to remember. I can't remember the others, if I'm honest.
But when you find the net, what's that like?
Again, when you play, you're oblivious to everyone around you. If there was 10,000 in the county ground or there was 500 in the county ground, it didn't make any difference to you. You kind of just concentrated on the game. So when it went in, it was kind of, you'd hear a roar from the crowd, but you're kind of oblivious to them in a funny sort of way. It's a strange feeling. I didn't score enough to have that feeling regularly, but it was. It's nice to see it at the back of the net. And it's nice to see your name in the paper the following day, and it's nice for my friends back home to see it. But on to the next one if you've scored. Probably should have scored a lot more than I did, that's for sure.
For those of us who played many years in the Sunday League and never scored anything, it would have been nice to know.
Trust me, I played in the Sunday League as well, so don't worry about it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So at the end of 1980 or the end of the 83 season, I think you're released by Swindon. Is that right? How did that come about?
Well, that came about with the introduction of Ken Beamish as manager. And he'd been assistant to John Trollope, and he ended up the manager's job. Don't know how he got it, but Ken Beamish then decided that he was going to put his own mark on the side. And what he did is I think from memory at that time there was something like 7 lads under the age of 21 or something along those lines. I mean, the figures are probably slightly out, but what Ken Beamish decided is that isn't the way forward. And with the exception of Charlie, I think he released pretty much everybody. So, I was pretty distraught at the time because I was in the first team. I thought it was odd, but I thought, well, that's life. John Trollope called me into his office and he said, well, look, Brian, he said, Torquay came in for you at Christmas and we told them you weren't available. So would you like me to make that phone call to Bruce Rioch now and tell him that you are available? And I said, well, yes, please, because I didn't have a great deal else. And, that's how my move to Torquay ended up. But the change round of players came when Ken Beamish took over and decided he didn't want the John Trollope players. He wanted to do it his own way.
Sure. Well, that move to Torquay was okay, wasn't it? I mean, you featured pretty regularly for them.
Well, yeah, it wasn't the best move I ever made. It wasn't my best decision in football. Lovely place, lovely people, but football wasn't on their list of priorities, if you know what I mean, down in Torquay. My first pre-season training session, I turned up after listening to the spiel from Bruce Rioch and Alan Slough, which was 2 big names in football, manager and assistant manager, and there was only 6 of us. And I kind of thought, well, normally at a club you end up with 46 and you whittle it down to 16. where is everyone? He said, oh, what we do is we get players in on loan from Saltash and Biddeford and places like that, the non-league teams around. And I thought, Christ, this is going to be a long season. And so it transpires, to be fair. Yeah, I didn't, to say I didn't enjoy it was incorrect, but it was completely different to Swindon, if you know what I mean. Swindon was a much more, everybody in Swindon wanted to talk football, and newspapers were full of football. In Torquay it was much more about holidays and laid back, and retired people not really wanting to watch football.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Devon, so I'm not too far away from Torquay, and they have this strange relationship with the football club. It seems to me, whatever level they play at, they get similar crowds. Yes. So it doesn't matter which, because they're in the National League South at the minute, and their crowds aren't that much worse than they would be in the Football League.
Yeah, absolutely. We played Manchester City in a League Cup game, and I think we drew in that game, but the crowd was identical to playing Rochdale at home the following week. And I thought, surely it should have been, but that's maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's probably why their demise has come, maybe, because, like I say, if you don't get people through the gate, you don't get revenue for players, do you?
Very true. They got I think they're fourth at the minute in National League South, so we hope they go back up again, because it's a Football League club, isn't it? They're one of the traditional teams. Yeah,
I always watch out for their results, and when I ever go to Torquay, I always treat the kids to a drive round to show them where I used to play, like you do. But yeah, I've got a soft spot for Torquay. It's a shame that it's happened, but I mean, it's probably happened for a reason, but it's a shame.
In fact, weren't you? You were with Leroy Rosinha at some point, weren't you? And he was manager of Torquay for a little while, and he got him promotion, I think, if I remember rightly.
Lovely man, Leroy. Yeah, he was manager at Gloucester, and I ended up being assistant to Leroy.
Yeah.
Nice
so from Torquay, you go to Cheltenham. Now, Cheltenham, as we know now, an established league club. Swindon have never won there, much to many people's annoyance. But of course, in those days, they were non-league.
Yes.
And you had a pretty successful spell there as a player, didn't you? Champions of the Southern League, which means that you get to promotion to the National League, and Player of the Year. So it was a love affair with Gloucestershire football, really, which started then, didn't it?
Yeah, but basically what happened there was when I was at Torquay, I bumped into back when I came back to Swindon one weekend. I bumped into Ray Baverstock, basically, and I'm good friends with Ray Baverstock. And when Ken Beamish had the clear out at Swindon, I went to Torquay. From memory, I think Charlie Henry went to Aldershot, but I might be wrong. And Ray and people like that, Chris Ogden, I think, went as well, but they went to Cheltenham. And I wasn't having the best of periods at Torquay, and there was a change of manager and a change of ownership and what have you. And I was and ahhing, and Ray said, "Well, why don't you come and play with us?" And that's how I went to Cheltenham. And I went to Cheltenham on the back of, they paid non-league wages, but they fixed me up with a job. So financially, I wasn't any worse off, but I was coming back to where, as a part of the country that I knew. So that's how I ended up leaving Torquay and coming to Cheltenham. So yes, we were non-league, but like I say, it was part and parcel with a job, and that got me kind of settled, shall we say.
How was it playing in non-league football? Because obviously you're playing in the Football League, that's one level, and then you drop down a couple of levels. How is that?
I loved the experience because the players I was playing with were genuine, nice lads. I remember the very first training session at Cheltenham. We were playing in a five-a-side, and I thought it's pre-season. Everyone gets a touch of the ball, and you kind of do things in your own time because you're just getting used to playing again. And one lad drove straight through me and sat me on my arse. He said, "Oh, welcome to non-league football." And at the time, I kind of thought, is this for me? And then looking back, I think that's probably the best thing he could have done. I don't think there's that people should look at it as non-league football and professional football. You see a lot of good clubs, a lot of players playing non-league football because they don't want to be professional footballers, or they want to get a job and they want to get a career. So they're not, they don't put themselves forward. So it's probably over the years it's changed, but at the time, it was good fun. I enjoyed playing there. I had a little purple patch for a season where nothing could go wrong for me. So, in that respect, I got off to a good start.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been looking through your record, and you've got a fair amount of success one way or another, because then you moved to Gloucester. captain them to the Southern League Midland Division title, to runners-up spot, I should say. But that meant promotion to the Premier League. So, you did okay, really, in those non-league terms, didn't you?
To be honest with you, all players look back when they finish playing, and they all say, "What could I have done, or what should I have done?" I got no regrets at all. I've tried all levels of football. I've tried to do my best. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't. But I don't regret anything I've done.
And nor should you. So then 3 spells as a player at Gloucester, including linking up with Leroy Ozinia.
Yeah.
Who was made, and then you were made manager. So how was your first taste of management?
I treat people in life how I wish to be treated myself, and I kind of took that into football management. I kind of thought to myself, well, how would I want to be treated by the manager at a football club? I played for some good managers, I played for some bad ones, and I just kind of thought the best way to deal with this is to get A, good players, but B, to treat them with respect. And looking back over my playing career and my managerial career, I'd like to think that everyone I met I had the utmost respect for.
It's not easy to get that, though, is it, in life? Because, as you know, some people don't treat people with respect, and it leads to all sorts of problems.
Absolutely. I had some problem players, don't get me wrong. I had some problem players. The choice was in those. It's much more cut and dried in non-league. You can just say, well, don't come back tomorrow. And they played non-contract. There wasn't contracts around for very many non-league players, and they were non-contract footballers. So if they didn't like it, they didn't like you, or you didn't like them, you just said, thanks, goodbye, which is a bit harsh, but that's pretty much how it worked.
How did you find being a manager then? Because all of a sudden, you're not responsible for yourself, are you? You're responsible for the whole squad and everything that goes on. And there's a learning process, I guess, about how to set up tactics, how to treat opposition, all that kind of stuff, which we as football fans don't really necessarily think about. We just see the result on a Saturday and go, oh, he's no good, or he's great, or whatever.
Yeah.
How is that transition?
It takes over your life, basically. You kind of watch more games of football than you've ever watched before. You're on the telephone constantly. One of the things I've noticed about not being involved in football is my phone never goes. You're dealing with people all the time. You've always seemed to have a problem somewhere, or one of them, and it's never football related. It's always an off the field problem, and you're always dealing with stuff that you think this can't be what football's about. The game was an actual, the nice part of football management. The rest of football management could at times be, quite difficult. I was, like I said, I treated everybody with respect. I asked them to play in a specific way. I tried to surround myself with good footballers with good attitudes. I don't like footballers with bad attitudes. Going back to probably when I was much younger at Swindon, if they had a bad attitude, I didn't have a great deal of time for them, because life's tough enough as it is without spoiled brats, and that's pretty much how I did it in management. I kind of treated people how I wish to be treated myself.
I mean, and also, of course, for those of us who will never play professional football but desperately wanted to but weren't good enough, I mean, it is a lot of people's dreams to make it, and you actually made it as a professional footballer. So, when you find somebody with an attitude, do you sort of have a go at them about it? How do you deal with it?
I think if they've got an attitude, you fall out quite quickly, because what you're trying to do is, I always used to try and talk to people like I was trying to help them, and I used to say to players, I don't have to help you if I don't want to. I've had my career. I'm trying to help you. If you want to listen and you want to try and learn something or do something a different way, then great, we'll get on. But if you think you know it all, then maybe you're not for me.
Yeah. Whitney and Cirencester Town. Now let's talk about Cirencester, because at this time they'd moved from Tetbury Road, I think, the old stadium. They'd moved to the new one, the Corinium Stadium, was in the outskirts of the town. And boy, oh boy, you had a relationship with them. Adi Vivash, who of course is now doing all right at Coventry.
Yeah.
Lovely bloke. Known him for years. You did all right at Cirencester, but there was I read an article in the Wilts and Gloucester Standard about how you were dismissed once, and this is the downside of football management.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
Well, football management, particularly at a club like Cirencester, is difficult because it's never a level playing field. You're always dealing with clubs that have got more money or better players or whatever. Basically, we set off the season and we didn't set up. We got promotion twice, I think. I think we got relegated. I didn't get them relegated. I think AD might have got them relegated. But anyway, I'd left before then. I left the first time because I just felt I needed to make a decision as to whether I wanted to be a manager or I needed to spend more time at home. And then the second time, I wasn't particularly chuffed with the way that the chairman had done it. Basically, if he wanted someone else to manage the team, that's absolutely fine. It's not my bread and butter. It's not how I pay my mortgage. But it's if he wanted someone, that's fine. But to do it publicly and kind of, I thought we were better friends than that. I didn't feel he needed to be as public and as if he didn't want me to do it, fine. Let's move on. But don't haul me over the coals, if you like.
You see, that's the thing we don't get, isn't it? As fans, we just say, "Oh, he should go." We're bottom of the league or whatever. But again, you're a human being, aren't you?
Yeah, but the difference is between non-league and full-time footballers. If they wanted to get rid of you, they'd have to pay your contract up. So at least you've got an ability to live. You've got some money. You're still coming in the same way. Non-league football, the money isn't life-changing. But when they say, we want someone else to run the team, sort of that's the end of that income stream, if you like.
Were you working at the time? I mean, it's not a full-time job, is it?
No. I was always working.
Yeah, the phone calls that you have to deal with. Like, I don't know, Fred's got a wedding on Saturday and he can't play. This is what happens at non-league, isn't it? So
yes, yeah, absolutely.
So all this is all encompassing. How is family life when you're dealing with this?
You try and integrate your family a little bit. I mean, like I say, I had girls predominantly. They kind of used to come to football with me and loved it. You try and interest. It's difficult because it's a very selfish thing to do, isn't it? Really. I mean, I used to spend Tuesday night, Thursday night, all day Saturday out with football and on the phone pretty much the rest of the time you were home. So it's kind of a very selfish thing you do, and sometimes for very little reward. But I think you do it because you're passionate for football, and I think you kind of forget that you're a family man, really.
And how do you take results? When you used to go home on a Saturday night, if you'd lost, how did you take those?
Yeah, I wasn't great on a Saturday night, to be honest. I wasn't brilliant. I was okay on a Sunday, but on a Saturday night, I kind of worked on the principle that I couldn't change it. It is what it is, until we meet again on Tuesday and either work out what went wrong or how we put it right or chat to some people. Technically I couldn't do anything. So I don't like losing, but I kind of understood that I couldn't do much about it. If you're a full-time manager, it's slightly different. You can, many a time I was in on a Sunday morning and feeling the wrath of many a manager's tongue. But, part-time management slightly different. You kind of all have to go to work on Monday. You can't haul them in on a Sunday, no matter how upset you are with them. So yes, it's just slightly different how the two managers think, probably.
When was the moment you thought, do you know what, football's had a knee now? I've had my luck with football. I'm going to concentrate on cricket. I mean, when was that moment?
What, playing or managing?
The lot, yeah, the end, management.
Yeah, well, I always believed when I was playing I was one injury away from packing in, because I haven't got a high pain threshold, to be fair. And I got that injury and I thought now's the time to pack in. Management, kind of, when that decision came at Cirencester, he wanted someone else. I thought, well, that gives me the opportunity to do something different. A lad in our village said, why don't you come and play cricket? And I thought, well, that's a competitive. I'll give it a go. And I used to play a lot of cricket when I was at school, and I haven't played since. But I enjoyed. Sport will always be most things for me. not everything, but most things. And as I got older, obviously, I can't do it. But it's I think you just kind of make that decision that you've had enough. I'd had enough of. I could have maybe applied for other jobs and decided not to do that. I'm not sure whether that was football, me falling out of love with football, or me falling out of love with footballers. I'm not quite sure, but I just come to that period where I just thought, I could spend my time better doing something else.
And are you still out of love with football, or do you get back to watch football?
I don't watch a great deal. I came to Swindon 3 weeks ago to watch him. 2 weeks ago to watch him play Crewe. That's probably the first time I've been back at Swindon, which is a shame, really. So I should do it more often. So it's just up the road. I go to Cheltenham and watch a little bit of football there because I'm good friends with the fella that used to be manager, who's now on the board of directors, John Murphy. So I go to Cheltenham a little bit. I walk the dog up the field and watch South Cerney play now and again, which is an eye opener. But that's about it, really. I kind of watch it on the telly. I'm a bit. I've turned into a bit of a lazy watcher.
I was going to say, how are you as a watcher? Do you still do it as a manager, as a footballer, or are you able to just watch football?
I just watch football now. I try not to have an opinion. I don't preach to anyone that I know more than they know, because that's probably not even true. I just watch the game for what it is. I still find myself watching people, watching players as such, and watching whether they play well or they don't play well, or crikey, if you were a manager, what would you do with him? But no, I don't I don't go too in depth with it now. I mean, football used to be everything to me. It's not so much now.
Yeah, I think somebody once said football is the most important of the least important things. I think that's pretty a way to look at it, isn't it?
That is a fantastic statement. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Because there's so much in life that's more important in terms of, we all love it. We're all involved in it. Results matter to us. But at the end of the day, other things matter too, don't they?
Of course they do. And they're probably more important, really. But, I can sense it. I sat in the Don Rogers stand watching the Crewe game with a friend of mine. And we kind of went, and there was a buzz walking to the ground. There was a buzz getting around the ground. And you find your seat. And you thought, I didn't find... sorry, the buzz coming back, but I just thought, I can see why people come. I can see why people go and watch this. It was actually very exciting. I mean, for the life of me, I have no idea how it ended up a draw, but it was a good game to watch and a good afternoon. I enjoyed it.
Well, if you'd have come Saturday and a 6-0 win against Crawley, you'd have enjoyed that, because there was some fantastic football. And I think Mike Flynn's got them playing fast, exciting football, which is, the joy for any fan, isn't it?
Absolutely. I thought they played really well for an hour in the Crewe game. I couldn't see Crewe getting back into that at all. I couldn't see them even having a shot. I thought Swindon were fantastic. And then all of a sudden the wheels came off, which again goes back to the conversations we were having as to, once the wheels come off, how do you correct it? But it was well worth watching. I think he's started on the front foot as a manager at Swindon. I think he started on the front foot, and I think he's going to start producing, good stuff worth watching. And I think that's what put bums on seats, because once people pay their money to watch it, that's when they can start investing in what goes on.
You see, if you're a manager, right, he's got this thing on Saturday where they're away at Doncaster, who are bottom of the league.
Yeah.
Everybody expects Swindon to go there and roll them over. You as a manager would know that that's not the case, is it? There's another team on the pitch.
Yeah.
So how would you approach that? I'm not asking you to be Mike Flynn, but as a manager of a game, how would you approach that?
I think the way Swindon are playing, I think they just approach it in the same way as they have in the previous games, to be honest. I think you've got to stop looking at league tables and stop working out, who you should and shouldn't beat. At the end of the day, they're always, when they're in front of you, they're a difficult side to beat, and you've got to break them down, and you've got to score goals or score a goal and to stop them going in your goal. So I think he's got to carry on doing what he's doing, and I think he's got to keep the same philosophy, because I think if you do, even if you play badly, you just got the feeling he was going to win 4-3. I don't watch enough football to be a proper supporter, but having seen that game at Crewe, and probably the one afterwards, which I didn't see, I would go and watch that again. And I think that's important. I think that's what you've got to keep installing in supporters. You've got to keep them interested and keep their bums on seats.
Do we overcomplicate football, do you think?
Yes, massively. And I think we do too much talking about it as well, really, because at the end of the day, it's a simple game made hard by the people that play it.
Because it's interesting, isn't it? You watch a game on a Sunday on the television, which is 90 plus 25 minutes now in the new regime.
Right, yeah.
And then people talk about it for 3 hours.
Yeah. How do they do that?
Yeah. I mean, why do we overcomplicate it? Why is it so difficult to understand? It's 11 versus 11, isn't it?
It is. But, sometimes I think you listen to all the build up of what they think the game's going to be. And invariably, it lets you down. The game it's not as good as you're expecting it to be. Some of the games I like watching on my telly are kind of like EFL games that you're kind of thinking, oh, who wants to watch these two? Well, they're actually probably the best games. The number of times I've sat here thinking, oh, I don't know, Chelsea got Man United, this is going to be a cracker, and it actually lets you down. And I personally, they do too much talking about it. They do too much. There's too much psychology in football these days. You should just put your boots on, play because you enjoy playing.
It's a very interesting concept. Do you think a lot of enjoyment's gone? I mean, huge money now, and I'm not going to ask you the obvious question. Do you regret not being around when the money wasn't there? Because you weren't around. The money wasn't there. So there's no point in asking that question. But is money an important factor now? Because we have players on 500 grand a week, for goodness sake, which as a player, you're not going to turn down, are you?
Well, I have that argument a number of times with the people closest to me. They always say footballers are overpaid. Well, I don't think footballers are overpaid. I think somebody gives them that money, and why shouldn't they take it? It's a short life. I mean, I get a footballer's pension that came out when I was 35. I can't buy much with it. I buy a packet of crisps at the shop, but it's kind of, when footballers are finished and gone, you'll move on to the next person, next player, next star, whatever. It's a pretty cut and dried business that they're in, and why shouldn't they make as much money as they can for that short period of time? Because it doesn't last forever, does it?
How does that work then? Does the PFA, do you get a pension when you finish? How does that all work?
I was told when I was an impressionable 16-year-old lad that you should put your money into this pension pot because it comes out tax free when you're 35. I think that was the story. Once you stop being a professional footballer, I'm not so sure you can still pay into it. I think when you're a non-league footballer, I think. But I only paid in for a little while, and I thought I was putting more than enough away, not to keep me in a grand lifestyle when I finish, but I mean, what I get, like say, wouldn't keep me in crisps.
That's very fair enough. Which I'm laughing because many people think all footballers have huge houses, they have Thrive cars, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but there's another side to it, isn't there?
There is. I mean, when I was at Swindon, I used to have a little Mr. Bean Mini, and it used to break down every time it rained. So I was certainly wasn't earning the money back in those days. I think how they do it is I think they put some of their wages in tax free into their pension and live off. They work out what they can live off and live off the rest. I think that's how they do it. They don't that money that they say they're going to get. I don't think that comes up on their wage slip every week or every month or whatever. I think they put a lot of that away and save for a rainy day. But it's certainly different times now than it was then, that's for sure.
I was going to say, if you get a wage slip with 250 grand on it every week, you're kind of all right, wouldn't you, really?
Well, from memory, the wage slips I used to get, there wasn't enough room to put all those noughts on.
Well, Derek says, let's face it, Brian, money wasn't life-changing in your days of playing. It was a well-paid job compared to most fans, but could be over quickly.
Yes.
When you were managing, did you set up your side to play a certain way, or did you spend a lot of time analysing the opposition?
We didn't have any resources to analyse the opposition. Every penny we had, we used to have to pay the players and pay the people helping. We couldn't afford to send a scout out to go and watch them play. We just used to have to set up a system that suited us, that suited the way the players we had. And sometimes it would be good enough to win. Sometimes some teams would have more resources, better players, and they would turn us over. And that was the nature of it, really. I mean, in non-league football, I remember we had something like I don't know, was it something like 800 quid for everybody, which meant like 30, 40 quid for everybody.
No.
And then all of a sudden you had to have a physio that was fully qualified. And suddenly that costs you a lot of money that's got to come out of your budget, which means players have to leave. Well, you don't get that in the football league, do you? You're trying your hardest, and you're forever at the beck and call of your phone going off with a 7-day notice. Some club wants your players because they used to work on the principle of Cirencester can afford them, so can I. And they used to offer them more money, and they used to leave. So, you kind of don't get that in the pro game anymore. Once you sign a contract, you're pretty much set for that duration, aren't you?
In the old days, of course, managers weren't allowed to coach, were they? I don't know if this was the case when you were managing, but I always remember that they weren't allowed to actually instruct players during the game because there were no technical areas, all that kind of thing. So you had to rely on the players on the pitch to make their own decisions to a certain extent.
All right. When I first went into, like, so I had no idea of what was coming when I first went into to being an apprentice. I think Danny Williams was there. He used to be always in a tie. John Trott used to have his kit on, and he would do a little bit of coaching. Bobby Smith didn't do a great deal of coaching. He used to leave it to Wilf Tranter. I think in them days, I think you used to get players that used to have a style of play, get them fit, and play that way. And I think it's slightly different now, isn't it? With managers, you've got to have all your coaching badges and things like that. I mean, like I said, I've got no coaching badges whatsoever, and I should have. And when people say, "Well, what coaching badges you got?" Well, for 40 years I've been involved in football, but that's not the answer. That's not the right answer. But it's my case. That's what I've got.
When you had that call on a Friday night saying, "Look, I can't play tomorrow, Gaffer, because I don't know, going shopping or something," how did you deal with that? I mean, did you slam the phone down, then phone them back? How did you deal with it?
What way can you deal with it? He's not going to play, is he? So at the end of the day, you're not very happy with it. And, to be honest with you, the majority of non-league footballers wouldn't let you down on a whim like that. To be honest, they're I wouldn't say they're different, but they wouldn't do that type of thing. They've worked all week. They've got prepared for the game, and generally they want to play. Sometimes you used to get issues that used to crop up beyond their control, and they couldn't make it. That's just the way it is. I wouldn't. It's difficult to say, but I wouldn't say non-league footballers are more genuine than professional footballers. I wouldn't. That's a big statement, and I don't think I really ought to make that one. But I never dealt with any lads that would leave me in the lurch. They would always do their best to turn up or be there. I've got very, very, very few phone calls on a Friday saying they couldn't play. You might get one on a Wednesday saying I don't feel fit, or I don't feel right, or don't this, that, and the other. But at least it gives you time to organise yourself. But I get very, very few on a Friday do that.
I was watching a program last night where these players are trying to get a professional contract. Noel Gifton-Williams is coaching them, and he was saying that one player had been interested in, I think it's a fifth tier team, and where salaries could be 50 grand a year.
Good God.
Which is extraordinary, isn't it? When you think about
absolutely. Some of the money in non-league football is silly. It's silly. It's unsustainable. I don't know why clubs entertain it. And 7 out of 10 times the player's probably not worth it anyway. But it's everyone's trying to compete, aren't they? Everyone wants that cherry on the top all the time. It's a little. With me, they offer me a job at Cheltenham and football wages, which at the time was probably 50 quid, but the job was more important to me because it gave me some direction, some stability, and some, I could pick a trade and I could do it. I think, these days there is too much money in non-league football, and some of the work ethic has gone out of players.
When you look back now, I mean, my goodness me, what a career. Both on and off the pitch, as it were. You said no regrets.
No.
So therefore, you must sort of sit down and be quite satisfied. Albeit, obviously, everybody wants to win the World Cup, but ain't going to happen, is it, for a lot of people?
No.
But when you look back on your career now, how would you sum it up, do you think?
I don't actually think I could have done any more. I think if I take a quick story of how I ended up playing professional football, probably would explain it really. I went to a school in Marlborough where we played cricket and rugby. Never played football at all. And I just played on a Sunday afternoon with my local village team. And in that village team, there was myself, there was another lad by the name of David Woods. We both went to Swindon. A lad by the name of Clive Bowden, he went to Chelsea. But the best player of all could have beat all three of us, or if he'd have wrapped all three of us together, we wouldn't have had the same ability as him. He wouldn't leave his house. He wouldn't leave his home, what he was used to. He'd get homesick. And he never signed for anyone, you know. But all of a sudden, I'd gone from playing on a Sunday afternoon and John Trollope watching the game. That was on the Sunday. By the middle of that following week, I was an apprentice and I had a job. And you know what I mean? It's kind of, maybe my circumstances are different, but you know, I read the other day that only 1 in so many million achieve their dream of being a professional footballer. Mine happened so quick. I kind of, I couldn't think of anything else. It just happened so quick. I remember, you know, getting in the car, driving to Swindon with my dad, and signing there and then.
Amazing. I mean, what, you know, you think of people being watched for weeks and weeks and weeks. Maybe somebody was watching you for weeks and weeks and weeks. You don't know, do you?
No, you have no idea. John Trott didn't indicate that was the case. He just saw me on this Sunday, and stayed behind after the game to talk to the manager of the team. And like I say, it just happened so quick. But it wasn't something that I had, you know. At school at 15, you have all sorts of careers meetings. What you're going to be, what aren't you going to be? And I never once said football because I never ever dreamed that would happen to me. So when it did, it was everything. And I thought, you know, I've got to give this a real good go. You know, some people, well, far, far better ability than me, wouldn't have had the career I had.
Fabulous. What did you want to be?
I'm the son of a pig farmer, and strangely enough, I thought I was going to be an accountant.
Fair enough.
Because I liked maths at school, and I thought I was going to be an accountant. God only knows why, and I'm glad it never came to fruition.
That was an answer I didn't expect when you said your dad was a pig farmer. I didn't expect you to be, but there you go.
Well, when I was at school, I used to say to my dad, "Dad, I've been picked for the school cricket team today." He said, "Well, you better get up the pigs and clean them out quick then." And I said, "Yeah, but I've got to be in Marlborough for 10 o'clock." He said, "Well, you better get up early then." And that's how my life started. So there was no airs and graces about me at all. It was just, you know, all of a sudden I just became this footballer at 15, thinking, you know, I've got to be the luckiest lad in the world.
But that's discipline for you, isn't it? Having to do that, get up and clean the pigs out.
Yeah. I think so. I think, you know, it didn't do me any harm. I've had a work ethic all through my life. A lot of lads I see haven't got that work ethic. You know, lots of lads I saw used to come, think they were apprentice, think they made it. On that 18th birthday, get called in the office and sort of come out in tears and think, well, what am I going to do now? Sure. You know, me, I thought to myself, well, I'm going to enjoy this 2 and a little bit years. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, well, you know, I'm going to have to work, same as everyone else.
Well, Brian, it's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much. It's been a great insight, not into professional football, only into professional football, but non-league football as well, the side of the game that we never see, really. And it's been absolutely fascinating. So I really appreciate your time, especially you've been working all night.
No problem at all. I said I got a good work ethic. I didn't say I worked hard, did I?
That means you turn up every day, does it?
Yeah, don't tell my boss that.
No, fair enough. No, it's been absolutely fascinating, Brian. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Take care.
And you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brian. And don't go away a moment. We'll see you in a minute. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. We will be back next Monday with Mike Cook, who is the Swindon Town women's football manager, previewing their season and also the cup game, which is at the county ground on Sunday the 10th. Okay, so we'll see you all then.